A shy girl, always hiding behind the lens, capturing fleeting moments no one else noticed, accidentally snapped a photo of a musician playing a piece the world had never heard. He wasn't angry. He invited her into the light, right onto the stage. For the first time, she dared to let the world see her, because sometimes we don't need to stand out. We just need one true gaze to believe we deserve to be seen. Afternoons in the park always held a particular kind of light. Not harsh, not soft, just enough to make everything seem to breathe a little slower. The leaves weren't a vivid green, but quietly tinged with gold. Conversations drifted sparsely, and the sound of the breeze felt like a whisper someone was trying to keep for themselves. This was Chloe's favorite time of day. Not because it was beautiful, but because it felt like her, quiet, muted, easy to miss. She sat alone in her usual corner, where the tree canopy was dense enough that sunlight slipped through in thin slits, scattering across the ground like fragments of memory. Her camera rested on her lap, her hand brushing against it out of habit. Not to take photos, but for a sense of safety. Chloe didn't like being seen, and she didn't like looking at people for too long either. But she loved capturing them through her lens when they didn't know they were being watched. From just far enough that she didn't have to speak or smile or hold a posture. A mother tying up her daughter's hair, an old man reading the paper, thin fingers adjusting the edge of his glasses, a young woman sitting cross-legged, eyes unfocused as she watched people drift past. Chloe photographed them all, as if afraid they might vanish if she hesitated. But she wasn't a photographer. At least, she never dared call herself one. She was just a girl who liked curling up inside the moments others let slip by. A strange sound pulled her from her thoughts. A guitar. Not entirely clear, but enough to make her pause. The melody wasn't familiar, and it didn't come from a Bluetooth speaker like usual. It was raw, a little unsure, but something about it felt deeply honest. She turned toward the lake. There, on a weathered stone bench, sat a young man. His head was bowed, fingers moving lightly over the strings. A faded baseball cap hid most of his face. His denim jacket looked sun-washed, and his sneakers were a bit dirty. He wasn't aware of the world around him. He didn't need anyone to listen. His music wasn't trying to be heard. It simply existed. Like a quiet monologue he was telling only to himself. Chloe didn't know why her hand reached for the camera. Maybe the light at that moment was just too perfect. Maybe the angle of his face stirred something that felt real. Maybe his music made her feel less alone. Her lens adjusted. She didn't plan to take many, just one shot, one moment. As gentle as a deep breath, but the moment she clicked the shutter, he stopped playing. He lifted his head, slowly. Not startled, not abrupt, but his eyes, dark brown, calm and warm like the late turning of autumn, met hers, right through the viewfinder. Chloe froze. She dropped the camera from her face, heart pounding like she'd been caught doing something forbidden. In a flash, the comfort she always found behind the lens disappeared. The camera no longer shielded her, it exposed her. She stood abruptly, not running but quick-stepping away, trying to escape that gaze. As if she moved fast enough, things could go back to how they were. Hey, just one word. Not loud, not demanding, but something in his voice made her stop. She turned around. The boy had stood up. He didn't come closer. He stayed at a distance like he didn't want to scare her. "Did you just take my picture?" he asked, fingers resting lightly on the neck of his guitar. Chloe hesitated. She wasn't good at lying, but admitting it felt foreign too. She nodded slightly. He smiled, not the smug kind, not mocking. A real smile, rare. In this world, was it a good one? She didn't know what to say, or she hadn't even looked at it yet, but also, no one had ever asked her that before. I don't know. He sat back down on the bench. "I'm Ryan." She didn't ask for more. He didn't seem to expect it. "Do you always sneak photos of people like that?" His tone wasn't annoyed, just curious, maybe even a little amused. Chloe bit her lip. "I don't think of it as sneaking. I just..." Like to take pictures when they're not looking. Ryan nodded, like he understood. Because when they're not looking, they're more real. Chloe blinked in surprise. She had never said that out loud before. But that was the heart of it, the reason she loved photography. Because in those moments no one was performing. No masks. Ryan pulled a tissue from his jacket pocket and gently wiped the neck of his guitar. The wind tousled a few strands of his hair. He turned to look at Chloe, his gaze not invasive, just warm. Chloe. She stared at him, startled. Your name's Chloe. Did I get it right? She blinked, flustered. Then nodded. He smiled again, a softer one this time. Eyes like that, it had to be Chloe. She didn't know what to say, but her heart felt less tight. For a while, neither of them spoke. Somewhere in the distance, music played, in the park. Faint, like background music to this moment. Ryan stood up. If you're here again tomorrow afternoon, I'll play you something new. Chloe didn't say yes, she didn't say no, but this time, she didn't walk away the same. She stood there, watching him disappear behind the trees, and for the first time, she hoped it wouldn't rain. The next afternoon, the sun filtered down gently, as if someone had just drawn back the curtains of the sky after a long dream. The air in the park felt softer, the clouds drifted slowly, and each leaf seemed to bow slightly as the breeze brushed past. Chloe arrived earlier than usual, not to capture anything specific, just because she couldn't stop herself from coming back. Same bench, same old tree. Her camera resting on her lap inside its familiar black bag, the strap frayed at the edges. She had never seen anyone, twice after photographing them. The faces in her pictures always vanished the moment she lowered the lens. That was part of why it felt safe. None of them knew who she was. But yesterday had been different. She hadn't just taken a picture. She'd been seen. And instead of awkwardness or irritation, he had smiled. Chloe had thought about that smile all night, partly because it surprised her, mostly because for the first time she didn't feel judged. When the soft strains of a guitar floated through the air, not close, not loud, but suspended in space. Chloe didn't need to look to know where it was coming from. Ryan was there again, seated just like the day before. But today his strumming felt more relaxed, unhidden, as if he knew someone was listening. Chloe didn't lift her camera right away. She sat quietly and let herself listen. No shutter, no hiding. Behind the viewfinder, just listening. After a while, Ryan looked up, his eyes gently seeking hers. He smiled. Chloe stiffened slightly, but this time she didn't lower her gaze. She didn't stand. Ryan said nothing. He just nodded, a wordless hello. Then he rose, slinging the guitar gently under one arm, and began walking toward her. Slowly. No pressure, no rush. As he drew near, Chloe didn't know what to do with her hands. She gripped her bag strap, released it, then gripped it again. Ryan sat on the bench across from her, keeping the same comfortable distance as yesterday. Not taking photos this afternoon? He asked, his glance flicking to the camera on her lap. Chloe hesitated. I didn't want to bother you. Bother? He chuckled, resting the guitar on his thighs. I was hoping I might show up in another one. She smiled, truly smiled, for the first time. Not the polite kind way, a light, easy smile. I usually only photograph people who don't notice me. Why? She hesitated. She wasn't used to answering questions like that. But Ryan didn't sound nosy. He sounded like someone who was simply listening. Maybe because when they don't know, they don't pretend. They're just themselves. Ryan nodded. That's beautiful. I think you're most yourself too, when you're holding the camera. She looked at him. That sentence touched something deep inside her, something she hadn't named before. But I don't want to be in the pictures, she said softly. Why not? She didn't answer right away. The sunlight filtered through the trees, turning her hair golden, and her eyes shimmered with unspoken things. I don't really like my face, she confessed, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Ryan was silent for a few seconds. Then he plucked a string on his guitar, the sound as soft as a breath. Most people look at themselves more harshly than the world ever does. I know, because I did the same. With my music. Chloe looked up. For a whole year I couldn't sing in front of anyone, he said, voice quiet. I messed up a note during an audition once. Everyone laughed. I stopped playing. 8 months. She said nothing. Not out of politeness, but because she wanted to hear the rest. Then one day, someone recorded me playing on the street. No warning. No permission. They just posted it online. I thought, this is it. Everyone's going to tear me apart. Ryan smiled faintly. But they didn't. People liked it. Not because I was good. They said it was because I was real. I was nervous. I messed up. But I kept playing. Chloe looked at him longer than she usually allowed herself to look at anyone. Some part of her nodded inside. So now you keep playing. For them. Ryan shook his head. I keep playing because I want to give myself another chance. Chloe pressed her lips together. Then quietly she lifted her camera. Would you mind if I took another one? Ryan didn't answer with words. He simply smiled and nodded. This time Chloe didn't hide behind the tree. She sat right in front of him, her hands steadier, her eyes seeing the person before her clearly. And when she pressed the shutter, she knew she wasn't just photographing him. She was capturing the moment she let herself begin to open. The wind passed through, carrying the faint sound of strings. And in that instant, the park fell into a strange, tender stillness, as if every sound had stepped aside to make room for something small but deeply important, an unspoken beginning. Chloe didn't know why her heart was racing when Ryan asked, You free tomorrow? We've got band practice. Thought maybe you'd want to come. Bring your camera if you want. The invitation sounded light, almost like something said in passing between two people who hadn't even known each other 3 days. But to Chloe it was a pebble dropped into still water, sending quiet ripples through her for the rest of the afternoon. She didn't answer right away. Just offered a small smile like she'd think about it. But she knew this wasn't the kind of question that would fade away like the other little things in her daily life. That night, she didn't turn on the lights in her room. She opened her laptop in the dark, the screen's glow painting her face. The photo of Ryan appeared, soft and slightly blurred. A slant of sunlight caught in his hair. His eyes weren't looking into the lens, but off to the side, toward the music he was making. There was something deeply still about that moment. She opened her editing software, not because the picture needed much work, but because she couldn't bring herself to close it. Her hand moved slowly over the mouse. She didn't really adjust anything, just zoomed in, studied the imperfect details, the way he sat with no concern for posture, the calloused hands, the tiny crack in the body of the guitar. Chloe exhaled. Part of her wanted to say yes. The other part, the part that had kept her small for years, still hesitated. She didn't do well in groups, struggled with conversation, especially in places full of loud laughter. In rooms like that, she always felt herself shrinking, fading. She'd tried before, a class party, a dinner with old friends, but she always left early, offering some excuse. The noise exhausted her, but worse was the unspoken comparison, the feeling of being less even when no one meant to make her feel that way. It was nearly too much. When she finally saved the photo, she didn't edit much, just renamed it Ryan Stillness, JPG. She didn't send it to anyone, just kept it. The next morning, she woke later than usual. The sky was overcast, not sunny, not raining, no beautiful light to chase. A text popped up on her phone from an unknown number, but she recognized it instantly. Ryan. 6 p.m. 34A, the old warehouse behind Left Bank Cafe. You coming? No question mark. Just an invitation, quiet and without pressure. Chloe held her phone for a long moment, then set it down. She didn't reply. But then she opened her wardrobe, pulled out the beige jacket she wore when she needed to feel calm. She wiped down her camera lens and checked the battery. Small actions but full of meaning. 5:30 p.m. She stood in front of the mirror. No makeup, just a touch of lip balm. Habit. She still looked like herself, slight, soft-eyed, hair tied low, but in her gaze something had shifted. The place was easy to find. The warehouse behind Left Bank Cafe was really an old studio. No sign, a rusted door, walls papered in aging posters. When she pushed the door open, music rolled out to meet her. Not loud, but rhythmic. Drums, guitar, someone humming a line in search of a key. No one noticed her at first. She stood quietly by the door, observing. Ryan saw her first. He was tuning his guitar, then looked up and smiled as if he'd known all along she would come. "Chloe," he called, waving. "You made it. This is our practice studio." She nodded, stepped inside, gripping her camera bag tightly. "No need to be nervous," Ryan said softly, as if he could hear her thoughts. "We're loud, but harmless." A girl with pink hair waved at her. A chubby boy in an oversized tee at the drums nodded with a grin. No one asked questions. No one gave her that scanning, curious look. Ryan introduced her to the group, called her a friend and photographer. No one asked for more. Chloe sat in the corner of the room. She didn't start shooting right away. Just watched. Watched how they laughed, tweaked the sound, teased one another in the shorthand of people who knew each other well. No one pulled her into the middle, but no one left her out. Every now and then, Ryan glanced her way, just checking. And Chloe realized she wasn't as afraid as she'd imagined she'd be. She pulled out her camera, began to shoot. Not many, just the small moments. The guitar strings snapping and everyone laughing, the way the corner light flickered across the drum face like a pulse. For the first time, she was taking pictures in a room full of laughter and didn't feel like a stranger in the scene. That night when she got home, she didn't edit the photos right away. She just looked at them and knew she'd been right to come. A quiet invitation, a gentle moment, but with the weight of a key turning in a long-closed lock. Something inside her had begun to open. The light inside the studio was soft, almost tender. A single filament bulb hung from the ceiling, casting a warm amber glow across the worn wooden floor, illuminating a golden patch in the middle of a room filled with music and voices. Chloe stood there, head slightly bowed, camera in hand, heart steady but alert. Band practice wasn't a performance. There was no formality, no audience. Just a kind of organized chaos, spontaneous but real. Notes clashed, faltered, paused, and picked up again. Jokes sliced through melodies, laughter tangled with the tuning of strings. It was its own language. Chloe watched from a corner. Each member of the band held their own shape, their own color, and she was the only one who made no sound. She hadn't taken a single shot yet. There was something unfamiliar, like a stream of cool air slipping into a room long closed. No one commented on her silence. No one tried to pull her out of her quiet. And that, more than anything, made it easier to breathe. Ryan was saying something to the drummer, then nodded toward her. He didn't motion her over, just looked at her as if to say, "Do what you want. This is your space too." So Chloe lifted the camera. She didn't shoot right away. She just looked. Through the lens, the world felt gentler, close but at a safe distance. She turned the focus ring slowly, then took her first shot, a close-up of the bassist's hands, gently plucking the strings, his face intent, calm. The first click echoed in her mind like a note outside the song, but somehow still in harmony. She stepped forward, not pushing into their circle, just closing the gap enough to feel the breath of the music. She kept shooting. Ryan leaning over his guitar, adjusting the tuning peg, his brow furrowed, golden light catching the ridge of his nose. Then Amelie, the girl with pink hair, bursting into laughter after botching a chord, still clutching her guitar like an apology. Chloe didn't stop. She moved with a quiet rhythm, as if the room were already familiar. But the truth was she'd never been this close to people while they knew she was photographing them. She'd never dared. Between shots, she caught Ryan's gaze. He didn't smile, but his eyes were calm, assuring. As if to say, "Yes, this is right. Was your first shot today a good one?" Ryan asked softly during a break, sitting near her. Chloe turned on her camera screen and scrolled to the first image. The bassist's hands, weathered but fluid, the angled light carving shadows across the curves of his knuckles. Ryan nodded. Beautiful. See, you don't have to hide to capture something true. She pressed her lips together, not out of discomfort, but because something warm had begun rising in her chest. Pride. Amélie wandered by, caught a glimpse of the screen. Did you get my face when I messed up? She asked, grinning. God, I bet I looked ridiculous. Chloe smiled. A small, real one. Not ridiculous, joyful. Send it to me, yeah? Amélie winked and walked off. The request startled Chloe. No one had ever asked for one of her photos before. Usually she just kept them for herself. Anonymous faces, unnamed moments. But today she saw something different. Her photos could make people happy. They weren't just evidence of existence. They were bridges. During a break, Chloe stepped outside to get some air. The late afternoon wind was soft, tinged with the scent of wood and old instruments. She sat on the step by the door, leaned back against the wall. The heaviness she'd carried that morning was gone. In its place was a gentle ache in her shoulders, the kind that comes after doing something that matters. Ryan joined her a few minutes later, a can of soda in his hand. Didn't think you'd really come, he said, offering her the drink. I didn't think I would either, she replied, taking it, cracking it open with a faint smile. But you did. And you even took some beautiful shots. She looked at him directly, for the first time without looking away. I didn't come just for the photos. Ryan tilted his head, curious. I came because I wanted to know what it felt like to walk into a place that didn't feel like mine, and not be turned away. He was quiet for a moment, then nodded. And it was okay, different, but okay. The breeze played with a few strands of her hair, and in that stillness, Chloe realized something. What she feared most wasn't being seen. It was being seen wrong. But today, for the first time in a long time, she felt truly seen and unafraid. The guitar's opening chords rang out like a plain-spoken greeting, followed by the low, steady pulse of drums, each beat falling into the wide silence of the auditorium. It was the band's first rehearsal in a real space, a small theater, a bare-bones stage, the overhead lights not yet fully lit, but already heavy with the imagined weight of watching eyes. Chloe stood just off stage, clutching her camera to her chest like armor. Everything around her was too bright, too open, too exposed. It was nothing like the studio sessions. There, she could tuck herself behind the frame. Here, there was nowhere to hide. Ryan had said it so gently the day before. Just a test run. If you feel okay, take a few shots, and if not, just watch. She had nodded, thinking she'd be fine. But now, watching the lights sweep across the empty seats and spill onto the bare stage, she realized something. The stage was not made for those afraid of being seen. Camera okay? Ryan stepped up beside her. Not too close, but enough to let her feel she wasn't alone. Chloe nodded. Just a little dizzy. I was too. My first time. Ryan smiled. Shooting a stage is a lot like standing on one, isn't it? Nowhere to hide, but also nowhere to pretend. She didn't answer, just looked out into the lit emptiness. Dust drifted through the spotlight like thousands of floating memories. So fragile it felt like one wrong move could erase them all. Ryan gave her shoulder a soft pat. Take one shot. Then you can go back to the dark if you want. She nodded faintly. Her fingers were cold on the shutter. She took a deep breath and stepped out from the wings. One step, then two. Her shoes tapped against the stage louder than she expected. No one was in the audience, but it felt like 100 invisible eyes had turned to follow her. She moved to the left side of the stage, where the lights hadn't fully reached, choosing a spot where she could shoot the band from the wings. Camera up, eye to the viewfinder. The music began. Chloe adjusted her focus. Amélie's fingers danced across the keyboard, her pink hair catching the soft breeze from a backstage fan. Ryan stood at center stage, shoulders slightly curved as he sang the first verse, strumming slow, measured chords, his voice low and contained. She clicked the shutter. The first shot was clean. The second, slightly blurred. Her hands had trembled. The third never came, because a spotlight sliced across the stage and caught her full in the face. A single beam, sudden and stark, as if an unseen hand had pointed straight at her. All sound faded. In Chloe's head, there was only her own heartbeat, rapid, uneven, unraveling. She froze. Her arms dropped. The light pierced through what little protection she had left, and in that moment, every old fear came rushing back. Being laughed at in school for misreading a line during a presentation, standing awkwardly at a party while conversations passed around her like wind, staring at her own reflection and seeing not enough of anything. Ryan saw her from across the stage. He signaled to kill the light, then left the mic and came toward her. "Chloe." She didn't respond. "Hey, just breathe, okay? Just breathe." She tried, but her breaths were short, shallow. Her gaze stayed fixed on the floor. Ryan crouched beside her, gently touching her shoulder. "Those lights, they're intense. I know. At my first show, I forgot the words to the opening song." Chloe turned slightly. Her eyes shimmered, but didn't spill over. I stood there, stammered, then bolted off stage. Worst performance of my life, but I came back. Not because I wasn't scared anymore, but because staying scared felt like more of a loss. Silence. The fan hummed softly. Someone's footsteps echoed quietly in the wings. Chloe looked up. The light was softer now, not white and blinding, but warmed by a golden tint. "You can leave right now," Ryan said. "No pressure." She nodded, then slowly she raised her camera, deliberate, careful, but not trembling anymore. She looked through the lens and took a single photo, just one, Ryan beside her, one hand on her shoulder. The backlight caught his hair and framed him in a soft, glowing halo. His face wasn't visible, but his presence was. Then she lowered the camera, gently, as if placing a small stone in the center of herself. "I need some water," she whispered, her voice rough. Ryan smiled. "Coming right up." As he walked away, Chloe stood. For a moment longer, the lights no longer made her want to hide, at least not today. The stage tonight wasn't like before. There were real lights, real people in the audience, even if it was just close friends and a few family members of the band. But to Chloe, it felt like a world turned up too loud. Ryan sat at the edge of the stage, adjusting his guitar strings, occasionally glancing up to find her eyes in the crowd. She caught his gaze a few times, but quickly looked away, as if it was too real to face. From the hallway leading to the wings, Chloe stood with her camera pressed to her chest. Her finger hovered over the shutter, as though the slightest touch might release everything she'd been holding back. But what she felt wasn't fear, not anymore. It was readiness. Last night she had looked again at that single photograph from the day the spotlight had caught her. Ryan beside her, his hand on her shoulder, the light wrapping around them both like a door cracked open. For the first time she had seen a photo that included herself. Just a faint shape, a shadow, but real. Tonight, she would photograph the entire show, not from afar, not through a zoom lens. Her hands were cold but steady. Her eyes scanned the stage, where the band was getting ready for their first song. She breathed slowly, her steps light as though she were walking onto sacred ground, the kind she once wanted to escape, but now felt was the only place she wanted to stand. As the first notes rose, Chloe stepped out. A beam of light, not yet fully lit, spilled through a gap in the curtain and landed on the stage's wooden floor. Her shadow stretched long, but she didn't pause. She chose a spot close to the stage's edge, near where Ryan usually stepped when the music pulled him forward. She crouched, found her angle, adjusted the focus. The music swelled, hitting her chest like a heartbeat. Familiar, but new. Click. First shot, Amelie laughing, head thrown back, the lights catching her hair like a streak of color across canvas. Click. Ryan leaning into the mic, his voice echoing bold and steady, but his eyes still searching through the dark. Chloe clicked the shutter like breathing. Not fast, Not frantic, just fully present. She no longer stood at a distance. She moved across the front of the stage, her steps firm as the drums behind her. Each photo was a promise to herself, not to be perfect but to be honest. She climbed the narrow wooden step closer to the stage. 1 step, 2. No one stopped her, or maybe they simply let her be herself. Chloe knelt, aiming upward as Ryan stepped into the center spotlight. Sweat beaded on his brow, the collar of his shirt slightly open, breath heavy from singing, but his expression was peaceful. She captured it all. Every movement, every drop, every note. Then suddenly Ryan looked straight at her. Chloe didn't flinch. He smiled under the brilliance of the lights, and Chloe took the shot. Click. That moment wasn't just a photograph. It was an acknowledgement. Something unspoken had passed between them, in the light, in the music, in the simple fact that neither of them was hiding anymore. The performance ended to warm applause, modest for a rehearsal, but in Chloe's heart it thundered like a real show. Ryan found her as the band packed up. He wiped his forearm with a towel, then sank onto the steps beside her. "You just did the hardest thing for yourself," he said, not as a question, but as a truth. She nodded. She hadn't even reviewed the photos yet. She didn't need to. She knew not a single one would be blurry tonight. Her hands had been sure, and, he asked, "I'm not afraid of the lights anymore." Ryan smiled. "Because you saw they're not there to blind you. They're there to illuminate what you choose to see." Chloe looked back at the stage. The lights were dimming one by one, the space filled with the sound of footsteps, shifting wood, soft echoes of packing up. "Tomorrow," she said slowly, "I'll develop these." Ryan was quiet, then tilted his head. "What do you think you'll see in them?" "Me." For the first time, Chloe answered without hesitation, not deflecting, not guessing, just truth. Because tonight, she had finally seen herself, through the way she saw the world. The day of the big performance arrived, and the weather seemed almost complicit in its perfection. The sky was a clean, cloudless blue, the sunlight a warm golden wash like honey, and the breeze just strong enough to send hastily taped flyers fluttering outside the venue. Inside the theater, everything had been swept and readied. The lights were being tested one final time. Ryan and the band were on stage for a last sound check, the drum beats echoing through the empty hall like a heartbeat waiting for something to begin. Chloe had been there early, but she didn't go inside right away. She stood in the hallway, cradling a roll of stiff paper in her arms. Inside, the prints she had spent the past week selecting, editing, enlarging. No one in the band knew. She had reached out to the theater manager, asking for a small corner near the entrance to set up a temporary wall of images. A quiet narrative of the band's journey, told in the language only she knew how to speak. Captured light. None of the photos were perfect. Some were overexposed, a few gently blurred, but they were all real. Amelie yawning wide at the start of a long rehearsal. The snapped guitar string that sent everyone into uncontrollable laughter. Ryan alone with his guitar, silent after. Her vocal run-through. The full group, mid-laughter after last week's test show. Chloe mounted each print inside light wooden frames in loose chronological order. Not curated like a gallery, but layered like memory, moments laid bare. She didn't sign her name, no captions, just images, faces, gestures, air. When the guests began to arrive, Chloe stepped back into a shadowed corner, watching as people wandered past the wall. Some stopped, some pointed and smiled. A mother pulled her son closer to whisper something over a photo. A group of teenagers snapped a picture of the entire display with awe on their faces. Ryan arrived later than she expected. She was adjusting the final frame, the one where he looked straight into the lens, light skimming the edges of his hair like a faint halo, when she noticed him standing before it. He said nothing at first, just looked, then stepped back. "To take in the whole wall, you made this?" His voice wasn't surprised, just soft like he was naming a feeling. Chloe nodded without turning around. Ryan started, then chuckled under his breath. I don't know what to say. No one's ever seen us like this before. Chloe glanced at him. It's just what I saw. No posing. No perfect light. Ryan reached out, touched the third frame from the top. It was him, back turned, the stage light behind him casting a long shadow at his feet. I remember that moment, he said. I thought no one was watching. I was, she said quietly. The rest of the band trickled in. Amelie let out a squeal when she saw herself asleep in one of the frames. The bassist turned red from laughter. Everyone was stunned. Everyone was quiet in that way people get when they're being seen. Not through filters, but with care. You should sign these, Amelie said, eyes wide. This is a full-blown exhibit. Chloe shook her head. I don't need to. If people see themselves in these, that's enough. Ryan looked at her then, not as someone who had invited her to document their music, but as someone who understood she had given them something unexpected, a mirror, tender and clear, showing them they had always belonged. When the concert began, Chloe entered the theater, not to the back row, not to her usual shadowed corner. She sat in the third row center. Her camera rested in her lap, but she didn't lift it yet. As Ryan stepped up to the mic for their first song, he paused. Just a few seconds, then spoke. Before we start, I want you to look out there, at the photos near the entrance. They were taken by someone who reminded us that he stopped scanning the room, though he didn't need to. That sometimes you don't have to be loud to belong. Chloe froze. No one turned to stare, but she felt it, that quiet, collective acknowledgement, the kind that said, "We see you." Ryan nodded. This first song is for the eyes behind the camera. As the music began to rise around her, Chloe stayed still, one hand resting on the camera, but she didn't lift it. Not yet. Instead, she looked up, into the lights, into the music, into the crowd she had once feared. And for the first time, she didn't feel like she was hiding. She felt like she was finally here. The auditorium was now full of sound. Cheers, whistles, applause that rose and rippled like sunlight breaking across water. The warm glow of stage lights bathed everything in gold, as though trying to hold off the first chill of autumn slipping. In from outside, Ryan wiped sweat from his forehead with the small towel slung beside the amp. He turned to the band, nodding, not just to mark the end of a performance, but as quiet gratitude for everything they had shared to get here. Down in the audience, Chloe sat still amidst the rustle of joy. Her hands rested empty on her lap. No camera, no shutter clicks, just her gaze on the stage, silent, steady, lit from within. Outside in the foyer, the wall of photos still glowed under a soft overhead light. A few guests lingered, pausing before each frame with small murmured exchanges. The images weren't just images anymore. They had become memory slices of a journey, of a circle of friends, and of a girl who had once feared being seen. There's one thing, Ryan said into the mic, his voice lower than usual, not booming but warm, like a conversation offered to each person in the room. The room quieted. Only Amelie's guitar remained, a soft pulse beneath the hush. This last song, Ryan continued, isn't on any set list. We've never played it before. He turned his head, scanning the crowd until his eyes found hers. Because it wasn't written for everyone, just for one person. The one who made me want to write again, not in grand lines but in the quiet details she sees every day. Chloe didn't move, but her heart pounded in her ears, loud and aching. Ryan sat on the tall stool center stage, an old acoustic guitar in his lap. The wood darkened with age, familiar in his hands. No sheet music, no notes, just memory. The first chords were soft, unhurried. There was something different in the way he played. Each note seemed to know exactly who it was for. Then he sang. The lyrics were simple, stripped down, but each one felt like it had waited a long time to be said. About a girl who sat alone, but found whole worlds through her lens. About someone who once believed she was invisible, but was really the light in the quietest room. About a moment in a park when someone saw her, not through words but through the soft weight of a glance at dusk. And about the day she stepped out of the shadow, not to keep the light, but To offer it, Chloe didn't cry, but her throat tightened, and something inside her rose like a tide, not crashing, just deep enough to show her how far she'd come. No one spoke when the song ended. The silence that followed was long, lovely, like an invisible embrace reaching every corner of the room. Then applause bloomed, slow at first, then fuller, warmer, spreading like flame, catching dry leaves. Chloe didn't rise, but Ryan stepped down from the stage and walked straight down the aisle. He stopped in front of her. "You know who the song was for, don't you?" he asked, voice low. No mic needed. Chloe met his eyes, and in hers there was something luminous, not sparkling, but steady, like a lantern that wouldn't go out. "I know," she said, and nodded. Ryan bowed his head slightly. Her thank you, not with a handshake, not with a hug, but with the kind of reverence reserved for something you know is rare. The auditorium was still full of sound, but around Chloe, it all receded. What she heard now was the guitar's strings, the echo of that song, and her own voice, speaking only to herself. "I did it." When the performance ended and the crowd spilled out in warm currents, Chloe stayed behind. She walked back to the photo wall one last time. She looked at each frame again, letting the memory of each one settle into place. Then she stopped at the final photo, the one of Ryan looking straight into the lens, his eyes bright, his smile soft, and in his gaze. She didn't need to take any more pictures, because the most beautiful moment she had already lived fully.